Hey, what is up, guys? What's up, YouTube? What's cracking? What's popping? It is Rules for Rebels coming back at you with episode 27 of Side Hustle Tuesdays. Today's episode is going to be a great one. I hope you find it inspirational. I know I did. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Today's story is a story of facing adversity and coming back stronger than ever. I think it really illustrates how quickly you can turn your life around and how quickly you can change your life if you make a commitment to do so. I've talked before about how two things typically inspire someone to become an entrepreneur, and even more than just being an entrepreneur, there's really two things that can inspire somebody to improve themselves or make any kind of change. Those two things are inspiration and desperation/pain. Oftentimes, whether it be listening to a motivational speech, seeing someone else's success, having a light bulb go off in our head and getting an idea, we are often inspired to do something. Now, inspiration doesn't last forever and it won't keep you going forever, so it's up to you to put habits in place and to commit so that at times when the inspiration wears off, you still keep going. The other thing that causes us to change is desperation or pain. We as humans are averse to change. Oftentimes we are not ready to make a change until the pain of our current situation becomes so bad that there's really no other alternative worse than it, so we are willing to change. I've given an analogy before, and I think I've also heard Ty Lopez and Alex Becker make similar analogies. So here's what it is. A guy is walking through the desert, hungry, thirsty, burnt to a crisp from the sun, and he comes upon an oasis. The oasis isn't great, but there's some trees for shade, there's some water. It's not fresh, cold spring water or anything like that. It's actually more of a muddy, sandy water bubbling up from a hole in the ground, but nonetheless it's water and it'll keep the guy alive. There's a little bit of food as well. Again, nothing special, but maybe some coconuts and dates. It's not fantastic, but it's enough to keep this guy alive. Now, some months pass and the guy is still there. He's sick of the sandy water and the same old food every day. There's nothing to do. He's away from his friends and family. But at the end of the day, he's not going to leave his oasis because he doesn't know what else is out there, and he could starve in a desert, so he chooses to stay. In most cases, the guy won't leave the desert until the watering hole finally dries up and he has no choice but to continue on his way and find his way through the desert. Now, this analogy transferred to real life could be someone who is in a job they don't like, but it pays the bills and are uncertain of what else they would do if they left the job. It could be someone who's in a bad relationship but won't leave because they're comfortable and they don't know what else is out there. The point is, oftentimes we aren't willing to make a change or start a business or improve ourselves until our current situation becomes so painful or unpleasant that the alternatives couldn't be any worse, and that's sort of what today's story is about. Today's story is about a woman we'll call Gloria. Today's story is a very personal one, not to me, but to the featured entrepreneur, so I'm going to be somewhat vague on her business and her personal story. Gloria was in her early 20s. She graduated college a few years earlier and had a decent job. She wasn't making a ton of money and it wasn't her dream job, but she had benefits, a 401k, all that jazz. She had some hobbies. She was into crafting. She was somewhat entrepreneurial. She never had a ton of success with entrepreneurship, but she was always actively doing stuff, whether it be making crafts and selling them on eBay and Amazon. She also had, over the years, gotten involved with some MLM programs. She'd recently gotten engaged to her longtime boyfriend. They were planning a wedding, and she'd just put money down on a house. She was beginning to start her life, and life was pretty good. Now, Gloria is a friend of mine. I'm not personally friends with her, but a friend would occasionally mention her, talk about her, show me some of her Facebook posts about some hustle she was doing, etc. So I was familiar with her. One day, this friend of mine, who's friends with Gloria, told me she had heard that she had attempted suicide and was at an inpatient mental hospital. Apparently, her longtime boyfriend had backed out of the wedding and dumped her. She was going to have to walk away from the house that she'd put money down and was going to lose a lot of money. Basically, her whole life, her future, her plans went down the toilet when her fiance left her. Apparently, it was too much, and she attempted suicide. Now, the story could have ended there. Fortunately, she lived. I hadn't heard anything about Gloria for a few weeks, maybe a few months. One day, my friend told me she was out of the hospital and settling back into life. A few weeks later, my friend was showing me some of Gloria's Facebook and Instagram posts. She apparently, while away, had gotten really into yoga. Now, I'm not talking just downward dog and a cobra position. This girl was doing insane yoga poses, like the type that you see some of the most popular and talented women and men on Instagram and Facebook doing. From a sitting position, using only her arms, she could basically lift her entire body into a handstand, put her legs in front of her. The strength and control she displayed was truly incredible. And keep in mind, this is only a few weeks of her having been practicing yoga, maybe a few months at most. Now, I'm assuming she took all that pain and all that negative energy and just threw it all into yoga. So over the next couple months, she started working and later teaching at a yoga studio. A few weeks after that, after developing a bit of a following of her class, she started doing some kind of pop-up classes at other studios, basically renting out somebody else's studio and hosting her own classes there. Having been somewhat entrepreneurial and enjoying crafting, she also started making yoga gear. I think like yoga socks, yoga wraps, yoga sarongs, etc., all types of stuff. She now has a website. I noticed about 6 months ago she was selling these things at $25. She's recently raised her prices to $50, and apparently they're selling pretty well. Now guys, I know I was somewhat vague with the details of this story, and the actual business as well. Being as how this story is one of a pretty personal struggle, I decided to keep it that way to protect her privacy. The reason I wanted to share this story, however, is I think a lot of times when it comes to entrepreneurship, or even just general self-improvement, we are impatient. We want results right away. When you start hitting the gym at first, you're not going to have a six-pack after 2 days. But if you stick with it long enough, you will. When you start a blog or a hustle, it may seem like things aren't going anywhere, and oftentimes people quit just before hitting that tipping point when things really start to take off. But if you stick with it, and if you work hard, good things will come. I really love this particular story, as you can't really get any lower than where Gloria was. And I was personally truly amazed at how quickly she got back into life and started having success. You hear stories like this where people struggle for years to put their life back together, and here's someone who went from rock bottom to having her life back in literally a matter of months. From talking to many of you guys, I know that many of you are getting into entrepreneurship because of a job loss, you're not happy with your current job, or even your current lot in life. It can definitely get frustrating when progress is slow, but if you really commit yourself and throw yourself into something, it's amazing how quickly changes and even a complete 360-degree change can happen. Anyhow, guys, I think this story illustrates that no matter where you are today, if you commit yourself, set goals, and embark on a mission, you'll be amazed at how quickly you can start seeing positive changes. Maybe in the future, if she's open to it, I'll see if I can get Gloria on for an interview and to tell her story. I'd love to show her store and hear her story in more depth, but for now, that's a story, and that's a side hustle for Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you were inspired, and we'll be back with you this Thursday for another great episode of Side Hustle Thursdays. Until then, this is Rules for Rebels, signing off.